Mito Podcast. I am Ashley.
And I'm Megan.
And today we have Leif Weigel with us, and we are going to, and Leif is a neurologic music therapist. Did I say it all right?
Perfect.
Awesome. It's great to have you here with us.
I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to talk with you both.
Yes, so I'm super excited because Leif, you are Troy's music therapist, and he absolutely loves you. And so I get to see what you do on a weekly basis, and I'm just amazed. Obviously, we've had quite a few music therapists in his stretch of being in school, and we've had definitely some good ones, but you are phenomenal. So it's very impressive to watch all the things you do, especially this year, which is a whole different show.
Definitely.
Yeah. So how did you become interested in music therapy? What drove you to this career?
Yeah. So I think, if I look back into my childhood and everything, I was always singing, always involved in music, and felt very connected to expressing myself that way and relating to other people through music. So I knew I wanted to do something creative and artistic in my life, but I also wanted to help people. And I especially, was interested in how we could communicate through music with people who maybe have different ways of communicating, or especially people with memory loss. So my grandma on my dad's side actually had dementia. And I was about 14 when she was pretty heavily declining in that process. And it was at the point where she couldn't remember our names and didn't know the day of the week. And I had just started learning guitar. I was teaching myself. I was 14. And my dad, who's a psychologist, actually was telling me how music can kind of bridge these gaps in the brain. And I was like, yeah, sure. I always thought of music as more of a performance, that it wasn't something that you can just do with people when it's not, your song's not perfect. And I knew like 3 chords on guitar. So I actually took my guitar in to play with my grandma. And I think it was the song Amazing Grace that I started playing. And she went from a state of being, completely disoriented, and her head was down. She was drooling, didn't know anything about her surroundings, to her head up, making eye contact with us, and singing all of the words by the end of the second verse. And I remember that moment so vividly, just because it was kind of where it clicked for me that music wasn't just about performance, that it was this whole other, it felt like magic that I had just, did something for my whole family, where we were able to have a moment of connection with her and closure before she ended up passing soon after that. And it was such a privilege to just be able to hold that space. And I just became a little obsessed with it, and how music touches us all, and how I could use that tool in meaningful ways in my own life and in other people's lives. So that was really the big moment for me, of when I knew that music was going to be a larger part of my life. And then, as I got into high school, I thought maybe I wanted to be like a performer or a songwriter. But I always came back to what was fulfilling the most for me, and that was the therapeutic aspect of music. So then I found a program that I loved for music therapy, and got my degree and came out to San Diego for an internship. And with music therapy, there's so many different avenues you can take, different people that you can work with, and different approaches to it. And I like that as well, having the flexibility. But that moment with my grandma was really the key moment for me.
That's an amazing story. I wasn't prepared for that story. That's a really touching one, definitely. And just with Troy, and like you said, he's definitely been a child that has really kind of come out of his shell when he hears music. I have so many videos of him, especially in the car, just sitting and dancing when he was little, because obviously that he doesn't necessarily have many communication skills, and it livens him up. It's something that he absolutely loves. So it's such an amazing thing to see.
I love seeing that with Troy every week, his excitement and how it brings a new life and energy to him.
Yeah. He loves it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, Angie loved music too. She loved dancing. My favorite video of her was like one of my last videos of her. And we're in the living room, and I always tried to just be as silly as I could with her. And I had this music on. I don't even remember what it was, but she was like kind of dancing to it. So I just turned the video on, and whenever this girl loved the camera. Whenever she saw the camera out, she was just a total ham. So I started dancing, and then she just started like doing things that she'd never done before, and was like waving her hands in the air and like shaking her head, and it was adorable. I loved it.
Oh, that is so cool to hear.
Yeah. So what kind of activities do you normally do? I've never been able to be involved in music therapy, and I know Megan talks about it with Troy, but I've never been able to like experience it.
So like I said, there's so many different avenues that a music therapist can take, and I'll just talk about the context of my work with students in the school district. So it's more of an educational model. So the goals that we're working on, music therapy is just geared towards whatever goal the client or the student has. So I'll develop the interventions based on what their needs are and what they're working on. So for, example, with Troy, he has these communication goals and these academic goals. So then music becomes, I like to think of it as the vehicle of how we approach those goals or get to the end result. So it's a lot of using singing or music as a mnemonic device. And I love that one, especially because I have, my approach is more of a neurologic one in my training. And I use the neurologic music therapy techniques like rhythmic speech cueing, which would be using rhythm to elicit speech. So Megan, you see in our hello song, we do everybody's here and it's time to say hello. So the rhythm really sets up the prompt for Troy to give that response. And we do that with other vocabulary as well. Or we can use music as a memorization tool, like practicing numbers and letters. And a lot of times it's really an attention grabber. It's for that motivation piece and that just overall engagement and enthusiasm. But, especially while we're on Zoom, it's so hard to feel connected and excited about learning. And I think music and keeping it engaging really can give us faster and better responses to reach those goals. So it really varies depending on every student that I have. Some kids are working on more motor skills, and I'll collaborate with their APE teachers. A lot of collaboration with speech therapists to work more on communication. And that's probably the most fun for me. I love to work on the communication and get kids using their devices or trying to say new words. But working on the motor skills is also really fun because rhythm and dance, we can utilize all these elements of music to kind of prime our body to know when to move. So for example, if a student's goal is to reach their arms up, we're going to have the music in pitch go up. So it's like lifting up your arm, bring it on all back down, kind of prompting. So those are just a little sample of some of the things we might do with students. But in other contexts, music can be used as a social or emotional tool. If I have a student that's working on who has like a more psychological type goal where they're working on self-confidence, we might write an affirmation song about the positive qualities that they have and engage in like discussions about lyrics that are uplifting or ones that they feel connected to or that they might identify with if they're going through something difficult in their lives. And I really enjoy that too, because music really, for me, holds a lot of emotions and is a place where we can, just pour our everything that's hard in our lives into a song, and then we don't have to hold it inside of ourselves anymore. It can just be held by the song. And I think that spans the lifespan from kids to elderly people. Yeah, music can really support us emotionally. So
absolutely. I think my favorite part about music, we're a big music family too, is the memories that it brings back. That's one of my favorite things, is you hear a song and you just remember the 90s. They were awesome.
Right.
Or you remember where you were or who you were with. It's just so amazing how music can actually do that.
Yeah.
You can almost smell the smells, and that's pretty amazing. And my next question would be, like, what do you see are the benefits? I see them in Troy all the time, just with him, bringing out his communication skills, working on his communication skills, and just movement and things, which, gross motor is a big thing for him too. But when you work with some of the other students, what are some of the things that you see, the benefits that you see with them?
Definitely in speech and communication, like working on articulation goals and using singing as a way to practice making the mouth shape and strengthening the oral motor skills. I see that, and motivating steps if they're working in a gait trainer. I have one student who was having a lot of struggle, taking a step forward, and we put a ukulele in front of him, and all of a sudden he's taking like 10-12 steps down the hallway just to reach for the ukulele. So I really try to look for what parts of music, or what style or genre or instruments each student is into, because music is so vast. Everyone has a different preference. Some kids love Katy Perry, some like Santana.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I love that you do that. You totally ask, what is Troy listening to right now? And of course he's all over the book, but Santana, and then you learned one of his songs, and I was like, yep.
So I want to do what my students and my clients are most excited about in music, and it's really cool to it's a little more difficult over Zoom right now, but when I was going in person to classrooms to have talked to the parent earlier that week to know what the student is into, and then bring it into the classroom and show the teacher that, hey, if we're using their preferred music and something that they're really excited about, look at their response and look how much more engagement you can get with them. And I feel that really empowers the teacher too, to feel like they have a stronger connection to their students, and the students have more buy-in to work hard in class. And just in general, for all of us, when we're listening to music that's meaningful, it bonds us, and it makes our whole lives have more meaning. And you're right, Megan. Like there's songs that come on, and I'll immediately be transported to the place that I first heard it. So students can start to develop their own personalities and preferences, and I think that's a human right, regardless of our communication abilities or how we communicate. Having a personality and sharing that with others is really important. And I think music is a special way to for a lot of the students that I work with, music is the way that they can share that part of themselves, something to connect to. That really transcends so many differences, language differences, cognitive abilities, whatever it is. So
definitely.
Have you found with this year, I know you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but with Zoom, has it been pretty difficult to move to that kind of a platform, or have you found some kids might flourish more in that way?
Yeah, it's really been a surprising mixed bag. I anticipated it being horrible across the board for every student, and I was excited to find that some students are actually doing better, I would say, in the virtual setting, because there's the novelty of having the technology, and there's also the visual aids that are right there. And I have the ability to, pull up YouTube and use sound clips and sound effects that makes it more engaging for students. There's definitely a handful of students where I'm just like constantly racking my brain trying to figure out how to connect with them. And, they really need that tactile aspect of music therapy, like the physical vibrations of the sound or the instruments to work on their goals. So the model of music therapy for those students has become more of a consult with their, home support or their parent, or in some cases siblings, whoever's with them most. I'll kind of coach them and tell them what to do with the student instead of doing it myself. And I think there's empowerment in that too, to be able to share some of these strategies and ways to use music that can help the students reach their goals, and the people that are working with them can have that indefinitely in their life, using music with their students. So yeah, definitely a mixed bag. I feel like I've grown a lot as a therapist in the past year, in my creativity and the ways that I'm utilizing technology. And I think moving forward, as things start to open back up and some students are going back in person, that I will continue to utilize those skills from this time. And I really see the whole field of music therapy shifting to include more virtual models for people, and also education in general. So
Yeah, definitely.
There's definitely benefits that were not expected, and of course challenges too. So
I know for Troy, he definitely loves watching you play the guitar. And so that's a little bit harder on Zoom, but he still is super engaged. So yeah.
Right. And I think Troy is one of those students that I feel like I still can connect with him, and he is benefiting from the virtual music therapy. So that's always exciting.
Yeah. So I know that Troy receives this because he has it written into his IEP. So how would a parent go about actually getting this music therapy if they didn't have it in their IEP, or if they just wanted to do it privately or on their own?
Right. So a lot of districts will offer music therapy as a related service. I can't speak for the whole country. I know in California that most districts do, where you can at least ask for it and find out how to go about that. I work for a non-public agency that is contracted with districts surrounding San Diego. So it's a school-based model. So all of my students have an IEP in place, and music therapy is added as a related service. And it's based on educational need. So like Troy went through an assessment process to determine his service level hours, and what kind of model is best for him. So some students will, just have a small amount of hours and it's more of a consult with the teacher. And then there's some students that it's more appropriate to have a direct service where they're getting it on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, just depending on what their goals are and how much extra support they need. So that's more of the educational model. And I know, some districts or school sites might be more flexible about those things, but it's all, under the basis of free and appropriate education. And then there's, of course, the clinical or the private model of music therapy, which would not be through the IEP, but those music therapists could work on IEP goals as well if the parent would asks for that. So for education, I'll work off the IEP goals that teachers write or speech therapists write, and support as like an alternative method of going about reaching those goals. Where in clinical music therapy, typically the music therapist will come up with goals with the parent, or maybe like an ABA provider, or sometimes a teacher, perhaps. Just depends why they're coming in. And for private music therapy, there's most likely an intake process, just to get to know the student a little bit more. And you can probably find private music therapy just by Googling it in your area. or going to the American Music Therapy Association website, and you can put in your zip code and see what's available around you. Yeah, so that would be the best way to go about it, probably.
Well, is there anything that we didn't cover or anything that you wanted to add or tell any of our listeners?
Yeah, when we were talking about how music can take you back to a moment in time, and talking about some of the interventions that we might use in music therapy sessions, it always fascinates me a lot to learn about the brain and what's going on neurologically, and why we get these types of results, and the changed affect and the communication coming out. And one of the coolest things that I learned about music is how it's processed in so many different parts of our brain. Like when we speak, our language center lights up, if you would look at it in an MRI or something. And then like our speech center lights up. When we dance, our motor cortex lights up. When we're just sitting doing critical thinking, we have our frontal lobe that lights up. But when we're listening to music, it's the language center, and it's the motor center, and it's our auditory processing system, and like the whole brain is working together. And I think that's just so cool, and that there's so much more research that we can do here. And it's exciting because there is a lot of research coming out about music and the brain every day. It's hard to keep up with almost, but because of that, if somebody does have brain damage, music can work as a detour to kind of bypass those areas that are damaged, or the areas that might need extra support, and kind of utilize the whole brain at once, instead of just trying to target that one area that's maybe weaker. So that's just something that I love to share with parents and teachers, is that, music's fun and it's cute and dancing is great, but there's actually like neurologically, our neural pathways are strengthening when we listen to music, especially our corpus callosum, which connects our two hemispheres together, and gets our whole brain to work as one. So I just wanted to share that because I'm kind of a neurology nerd sometimes.
I was going to say, that's pretty amazing. I did not know that, but that shows how important it is.
Yeah. And those even more parts of the brain light up when we do dancing together. So I try to, include in my sessions with students a lot of movement and this bilateral kind of dance moves, because that really has the two sides of our brains work together and primes it for whatever the lesson is to come after that. It's like a brain warm up, essentially. And I notice a lot more success in sessions when we start with some movement to music and get our bodies moving, than if we just dive right into something. So yeah.
That is exciting.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Leif, for joining us. And I appreciate all that you do with Troy. You are amazing. And by the way, you have an absolutely beautiful voice. I haven't mentioned that yet either.
Thanks so much.
The birthday song you did for Troy was awesome.
I had fun making that.
Oh, good.
That's one of the benefits of virtual music therapy, is I learned how to record music a little better and make some beats and get a little funky with my
exactly. Well, good.
How fun. I'm sad I missed that.
I will send it to you.
Well, like Megan said, thank you for joining us. We both really appreciate having your perspective and just being able to talk about music therapy, because I don't think it's talked about enough. And I think it's almost one of those hidden therapies that a lot of families don't really know that's out there to be able to utilize. And for the exact reasons that you just said, about how much of your brain is involved when you do music therapy. And
right.
I mean, we all enjoy some sort of music. We all turn it on in the car. We all want to have some relaxation time. We all need to get pumped up for something. And if you get those emotions, imagine what else your brain is doing. And especially for like you were saying, with kids that have, or even adults with communication I don't want to say issues, but different ways of communicating, or like motor skills, or like even if your child isn't able to move like a neurotypical child, that doesn't mean that this won't work for them. This could help them.
Right.
So I think it's very exciting, and I'm glad that we were able to talk to you and just bring that perspective. And I'm hoping that that will inspire more families to at least look into it, or maybe just go and play some music for their kids more often, you know?
Exactly. Either way, I think it's so important as part of our lives, you know, from birth to old age.
Yes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you again for being on the podcast with us. If you are listening, this was the Mito Podcast. If you have any questions or if you have any suggestions for future podcasts, please email us mitopodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, and mitopodcast.com.